It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce the chairperson for this session, Professor N. Marikkar, Head Food Chemistry Project, National Institute of Fundamental Studies. Next, I shall introduce the judges for this session. These presentations will be evaluated by Professor K.H. Sarananda, Senior Lecturer, Department of Biosystems Engineering, Faculty of Agriculture and Plantation Management, Wayamba University of Sri Lanka. Dr. M.P. Paranagama, Senior Lecturer, Basic Sciences, Faculty of Dental Sciences, University of Peradeniya. Dr. S. Jayatilaka, Senior Lecturer, Department of Food Science and Technology, Faculty of Livestock, Fisheries and Nutrition, Wayamba University of Sri Lanka. Now we invite Professor N. Marikkar to chair the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rasanjali Samarkon, for introducing me to this session. Welcome all to the technical session 2 of the 33rd Annual Congress of the PGIA. So altogether there are 6 presentations today, and we are going to invite them one by one. The first paper on this session is identifying panel inconsistency in sensory profiles using multivariate analysis of variance and follow-up canonical variate analysis. The authors are Dr. Fernando, S. Samita, and T.S. Pereira. And I would like to invite Dr. Fernando for the presentation.
Desha Fernando, presenting the findings on the research identifying panel inconsistency in sensory profiles using multivariate analysis of variance and follow-up canonical variate analysis. As it is known, sensory evaluation is a leading factor that governs the food market. Therefore, sensory panels should provide results that are accurate, discriminating, and precise. Assessor's reliability, therefore, becomes a paramount of interest. But many studies have proven that there are discrepancies or inconsistencies among assessors because all these are human beings. Therefore, even though they are equally trained or equally experienced, there can be differences among them. So this inconsistency in sensory evaluation then becomes a serious problem which should be addressed. Several methods have been described in the literatures from the 1990 decades. Consonant index, eggshell plot, linear mix model, concordance analysis, parallel factor, coefficient which was used to downweight the bad performance, clustering of latent variable approach, and cluster analysis and analysis of variance. But all of these methods show one major problem. That means these methods neglected the dimensionality of the three-way in sensory data. In sensory data, we have assessors or the evaluators or the tasters or customers, and products or regions or sample. And these people give scores or do the evaluation on the based on the sensory attributes. Therefore, in the sensory analysis, we have to consider all these 3 dimensions. But in this technique, they have considered only 2 dimensions at once. Therefore, in methods, when they consider the attribute wise, each attribute separately, so the correlation between attributes will be ignored, and if they aggregates the data over the assessors, assessor discrepancy ignored. Present study was to explore the panel disconsensus in sensory evaluation, key sensory evaluation by a 3-way analysis method. Multivariate analysis of variance followed with canonical variate analysis. In this three-way method, two-factor MANOVA and CVA, using the MANOVA, we could identify the discrepancy between the assessor by concerning all attributes simultaneously. Then the consistent assessors can be clustered using canonical variate analysis. This methodology, this technique was analyzed using the SAS University. Based on this technique, we can develop the multivariate assessor model. Before going to multivariate model, it's better to have the idea about the univariate assessor model. As I mentioned in the previous slide, in sensory analysis, we have assessors, products or regions, and the attributes on which they are doing the assessment. So, in univariate assessor model, which will consider one attribute per time. That means assessor effect, region effect, and interaction of assessor and region are considered will be only for the one particular attribute, that is jth attribute. The univariate ANOVA model, in this method, the interaction term, assessor region interaction term, describes the differences between the assessors, how the differences between the assessors varies with the levels of the region. Then come to the multivariate assessor model. In the multivariate assessor model, we have the data matrices instead of vectors, and we are concerning assessor effect, region effect, and the assessor region interaction effect using the Wilks lambda statistics. If there is effect, the MANOVA model is significant, that means the MANOVA model is significant, then we are going for the canonical variate method. That is, using that we can identify which levels are differences in each factors. Like we are doing the post hoc in univariate analysis. The canonical variate analysis, observations are plotted against the two canonical variates. We can identify how many significant canonical variates are there, but for the illustrative purposes, generally we plot the coordinates of against the two canonical variates and plot the 95 confidence regions around the mean of that, and the confidence area was calculated using this equation. The set used in this study was a secondary one, which was collected by one of my co-authors, and this data set consisted with the scores given by 8 well-assessed t-tasters for the samples from 13 t-growing regions in Sri Lanka on 6 central sensory attributes, which were the color, strength, flavor, aroma, and overall color. So the scores were on the Likert scale, 5-point rating scale, and this data was collected for over the 1-year time period on monthly basis in 2009. Before doing the multivariate analysis method, we know that we have to check whether our data follows the tally with the assumptions of those multivariate techniques. Here we are doing the MANOVA method. In the MANOVA, the assumptions are that observation should be randomly and independently sampled, dependent variable should be in interval scale, and also dependent variable should be followed the multivariate normal distribution. We tested the multivariate normality using the Maria's test. Another thing, there are evidence that multivariate techniques are appropriate to ordinal data as well. So we tested the multivariate normality using Maria's test and checked for the p-value of the test statistic. If that p-value is higher than the significant level, which means that our data is followed the multivariate normal distribution. But in this data set, I have 12 months data. Out of 12 months, 9 months satisfied the multivariate normal distribution. Then I came to the assumption that the data was suitable for the analysis suggested in the methodology. So the results part, the multivariate analysis model. So what I have to check is the Wilks lambda statistic for 3 possible effects: assessor, region, and interaction. and p-values for all three effects were significant. That means assessor effect is significant, means assessors there is a discrepancy between assessors. Interaction effect significant means that discrepancy between assessors varies across the regions. Then canonical variate analysis. After identifying that there is a discrepancy, then this thing in canonical variate analysis for each region to detect assessors who are consistent. Biplots were based on the first and the second canonical variate scores, and these biplots we can see the rays. This indicates the contribution of attributes for each canonical variate, and then direction of rays expresses the expertness of particular assessor is more towards the attribute of directed. And if these confidence circles are overlapped, which means assessors are consistent for the samples received from that particular region. One example from the Bandarawela in January. In this region, we can see that all circles are overlapped. That means there is no discrepancies among these 8 assessors for this particular region in this month. In this example, only one assessor, third assessor, is deviated from others. This is from Agarapathan in April. And also we can say the array of quality is towards the assessor 2. That means we can say assessor 2 is more expert for this particular attribute in assessing T sample. This is another example. We can see 2 groups of assessors. We came to these conclusions using the technique of multivariate analysis of variance and canonical variate analysis. We could identify that disagreements among assessors were existed, and their assessments varied depending on the regions as well as the month of the year. Therefore, effective methods are required, like this. Effective methods are required to identify these discrepancies and identify consistent assessors. For that, NO1 followed with CVA would be a better option. Using this technique, we could detect the discrepancies. We could use this to select assessors who have specific expertise to identify specific attributes, and using this provides a strategy to identify consistent assessors suitable for different regions, and also in circumstances where leaders want to find 2 groups of assessors, 3 groups of assessors, and groups who are suitable, groups who are not consistent with the finding, and groups suitable only for certain attributes, groups suitable for another set of attributes. Like those circumstances, these methods will be a better choice. And overall, we can say that ANOVA followed with CVA is useful in the requirement of attribute-specific agreement among assessors. Finally, we can conclude that MANOVA followed with CVA is a better, is a statistical solution, better statistical solution to explore the disagreement among assessors and identifying suitable assessors for sensory evaluations. Some of the references I used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. D.R. Fernando, for your nice presentation. Now the presentation is open for question and answer. So I would like to welcome our panel of judges to raise question from the presenter. Please, Dr. Saranda, can you raise the question? So can you unmute your mic? We cannot hear your voice.
Right, sorry. And in this study, so is the same T sample is given for all the testers, because with the elevation, so T quality changes. How it is done in this study?
I didn't hear it clearly, sir.
Sorry.
I didn't get it clearly, sir.
So in this study, have you given the same T samples to be tested for all panels? Because in the elevation, because of the elevation, T quality get changes.
Yeah, same sample for all 8 tasters. And I mean, I had 4 samples per region, and the same sample was given for the all 8 assessors.
Okay, right.
Okay, can I ask other 2 judges, can you please raise any questions from the presenter?
So, Ms. Fernando, I would like to ask, now if you, now this is for T samples. Now, if we are to do this for a different food product,
Yes.
can we apply the same method, or do we have to, like, can you generalize this?
Yes, madam, I can generalize this method because in this example, we can see that if we are assessing not only the tea, even whatever the food product or even cloth or whatever thing, when we are doing for the marketing studies, then we can have assessors or customers, and we will have products as well. We can get their scores or the evaluation for those particular products depending on the several sensory parameters. Likewise, we can use this method for whatever the food product or even in the clothing product or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Paranagama, do you have any questions to ask from the from the presenter?
Yes, Miss Fernando, it's
Yes,
a
ma'am.
wonderful presentation and it was also very informative. So what's the novelty of this finding? Is it done for the first time for tea tasting in Sri Lanka?
It's like this, madam.
Or was it done earlier as well?
Yeah, it's like this, madam. In Sri Lanka, as well as in other countries, for tea, not only for the tea example, whatever, for several coffee and ciders and several other food products, they have done this method. I mean, done the sensory analysis, but not using this MANOVA and canonical variate analysis technique. That's because in all other method, all other applications, what they have done is they have taken only 2 dimension at once. That means they have taken the assessors and the products. Then they ignored the several set of what we call attributes at once. So they have done that technique only for one attribute at times. For
Okay,
using
so
this
that means,
method, I was trying to find out. I was trying to explore the usefulness of I mean taking all attributes at once. So,
Okay, Ms. Fernando, your time is up now. Thank you very
sir.
much for your answers. Okay,
Thank you
now
very much, sir.
let's move to the next paper. Nutritional and phytochemical composition of leaves of Moringa oleifera lamb grown in low country wet zone of Sri Lanka. Authors are MSS Faumia, BEP Mendis, RPNP Rajapaksa, R Sivaganeshan, and AHM Maujud. The presenting author is Ms. SS Faumia. Please welcome.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Faumia Siddiq, presenting the research findings on the nutritional and phytochemical composition of leaves of Moringa oleifera lamb grown in low country wet zone of Sri Lanka. Moringa oleifera lamb is one of the 14 species in the family Murungaceae, and this plant is native to the sub-Himalayan regions in India, and it is widely distributed in many tropical and subtropical countries. This plant is recognized by several names: the drumstick tree, miracle tree, and the horseradish tree. And in Sinhala, it is named as the Murunga, and in Tamil, Murungai. Several parts of this plant is consumed by the humans from the ancient times, and it is one of the used as one of the medicinal herb too. The composition of the plants can be divided into two: the nutritional components and the anti-nutritional components. The macronutrients such as the carbohydrates, protein, and lipids, and the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals, are considered as the nutritional components. The fiber and the phytochemicals are considered as the anti-nutritional components. The therapeutic efficacy of the plant is depend on the availability of the anti-nutritional components. Therefore, assessing the plant composition is vital in research and other activities in the field of nutrition and health. The selected objective of this study were determination of macro and micronutritional composition in dried Moringa oleifera leaves and the determination of important phytochemicals in dried Moringa oleifera leaves. Proximate analysis was performed to assess the proximate composition such as the ash, crude protein, crude fat, crude fiber, nitrogen-free extract, and the moisture, and all the analyses were carried out using the standard official methods. The several methods were adopted in the methodology: the sample collection. The fresh Moringa oleifera leaves of healthy plants were randomly collected from the low country wet zone of Sri Lanka, representing the Western province. And they were identified and authenticated at the Department of National Herbarium, National Botanical Garden, Peradeniya. The preparation of the sample: the undamaged fresh leaves were collected and washed thoroughly with plenty of water to remove the dust and dirty particles. The washed leaves were air dried for 3 days at the room temperature and kept in the oven for 24 hours at 45 degrees Celsius. And the dried leaves were well mixed and homogenized and made into fine powder by using the laboratory grinder, and were stored in airtight transparent zipper bags with the proper labeling. And the series of experiments were carried out by the sample as the flow chart shown here. The determination of the moisture content: the procedure was performed according to the dry oven method. The percentage of moisture was calculated by using this formula. These are the equipments and materials used in this procedure. And determination of the ash content: the muffle furnace method was used in the procedure to determine the ash content, and this formula was used for the calculation. These are the utensils used in this experiment. The gel dull method was used for the procedure to determine the crude protein. These are the equipments and material used in this procedure. The soft sweat extraction method was used in the procedure to determine the crude fat content. These are the equipments and material used in this procedure. And acid alkali hydrolysis method was used for the procedure to determine the crude fiber content. The percentage of crude fiber was estimated by using this formula. These are the equipments and material used in this procedure. The nitrogen-free extract was calculated by the arithmetic difference method. And the mineral contents were determined by using the flame atomic absorption spectrophotometer. And the standard HPLC method were performed to detect the water soluble and the fat soluble vitamins. And the phytochemical analysis, this is the second objective of this study. The phytochemicals or secondary metabolites are the plant chemicals and have a great antioxidant potential. They are biologically active in human body and they give immense health benefits. They provide desirable health benefits to reduce the risk of major chronic diseases. Several methods were adopted in this methodology. The preparation of plant extract. The aqueous extracts was prepared by using the hot water and cold water. The yield of extract was obtained from the 10 grams of dried leaves of Moringa oleifera, and the final concentration of the filtrate was made into 1 milligram per milliliter. Total phenolic content, flavonoids, tannin, and alkaloid contents were measured in this study. All the chemicals and reagents used were of analytical grade. UV visible spectrophotometer and the 1 centimeter quartz cell were used for absorbent measurement. Standard stock solutions were prepared by using the gallic acid, quercetin, and atropine to measure the phytochemicals. For each phytochemical, a calibration curve was obtained for concentration and absorptions. Determination of total phenolic compound. Steps were performed according to the Collinsius-Calcium method, where the gallic acid was used as a standard, and the wavelength of 765 nanometer was used to obtain the readings of absorbance. And to determine the tannin compound, the Collinsius-Calcium method was used and the gallic acid was used as the standard, and the wavelength of 725 nanometer was used to obtain the readings of absorbance. Aluminum chloride calorimetric assay was used to determine the flavonoid compound, and quercetin was used as a standard, and the wavelength of 510 nanometer was used in the spectrophotometer to obtain the readings of absorbance. And the alkaloid compound were measured by using the dragon drops method, and where the atropine was used as the standard, and the wavelength of 470 nanometer was used to obtain the readings of absorbance in the UV spectrophotometer. Every procedure was replicated and recorded the mean of the readings. These are the results obtained. For the proximate composition, it indicates the presence of all the macronutrients, but the carbohydrate, food, protein, and ash contents were higher. And this is the mineral content results obtained from this study, where the calcium and potassium, those are the two essential minerals, are rich in this sample when compared to the other minerals, and these are giving very much health benefits to the body. And these are the vitamins found in this sample. The mainly antioxidant possessing vitamins were detected in higher level, and these are the phytochemicals we measured, and it indicates all the phytochemicals were present in the sample in the various values, but the yield was higher in the hot water extract when comparing with the cold water extract. These are the standard curves used to determine the phytochemical composition. All the calibration graphs exhibited in strong positive linear correlation. So the conclusion are based on the findings of this study, Moringa oleifera leaves contain appreciable amount of various phytochemicals, potent antioxidant, important macro and micronutrients. It can be confirmed that previously proven antioxidant potential of Moringa oleifera leaves can be due to the higher presence of ascorbic acid, flavonoid, phenolics, and vitamin A and E content as identified in this study. Therefore, Moringa oleifera obtained from the low country wet zone of Sri Lanka can be identified as a potential raw material for a number of pharmacological applications. Its rich profile of macro and micronutrients, the Moringa oleifera leaves can be recommended as an economical source of nutrient to be included into human diet. This institution should be acknowledged because the NCAS, the National Center for Advanced Studies in Humanities and Social Science, for their financial assistance, and the Department of Food Science and Technology, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya, Herbal Unit of ITI Malabe, Department of Veterinary and Medical Institute of Indigenous Medicine, University Colombo, for their technical support. And these are the few references I have used. And I wind up this presentation with the pleasing word of thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faumia, for your nice presentation. Now the presentation is open for question and answer. I welcome our judges to raise question from the presenter. So first, I would like to ask Dr. Saranand.
Yes, Ms. Faumia, thank you for nice, interesting presentation. And why have you focused into this taken leaves from the wet zone? So this moringa is normally grown in the dry zone.
Yes.
And is there any special reason why it is focused on the limited only the wet zone?
Yes, sir. Because I want to do a research study, and I selected the research study based on the traditional home remedy. That is, Moringa oleifera leaves are used for a clinical conditions called the premenstrual tension by the all communities in Sri Lanka. So I intend to prove that home remedy scientifically by doing this research.
Okay, I would like. Okay, thank you. I would like to ask Dr. Paranagama to raise your question from the presenter. Dr. Paranagama, do you have any questions?
Yes, Ms. Faumia.
Yes, madam.
Previously, a study has analyzed the Moringa oleifera leaves for these minerals, and they have shown that leaves from dry zone contain high levels of minerals and antioxidants.
Yeah.
So what is the
Yes,
purpose
madam,
of
because,
doing your study?
Yes,
Using
madam.
samples from the wet zone.
Yeah, because there are several studies has been done in several provinces of Sri Lanka, but except in Western province. But in the Western province also, in the Kalusara district, there was a study done by the ITI people. But I want to carry out the work at the Western province because my main research project was the evaluation of the therapeutic and nutritional potential of dry leaves of Moringa oleifera with special reference to its usage in the management of premenstrual syndrome in an urban sample population.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask Dr. S. Jayatilaka to raise questions from the presenter.
Thank you. Ms. Faumia, I would like to ask you, if now since this is highly rich in very many nutrients, now suppose we make it as a food product for consumption, what would be the best method of processing?
Yeah, madam, I have an idea because in my study I did in the first phase I did the screening of the premenstrual syndrome among the adolescents as well as the young adults. So I found that most of the school children are not taking the breakfast. So I have an idea to these preparations can be included in a food formula for a breakfast.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Faumia, when you ask question, try to be very specific and objective when you answer question, because they are asking something, you are answering something else. Okay, thank you very much. Then we will move on to the next paper, determination of nitrite, nitrate, total fat, and heme iron content in selected ready-to-eat processed meat products available in Sri Lanka. Authors are MBF Jamsia and T. Mahendran. Ms. MBF Jamsia will make the presentation. Welcome.
Good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to meet you all at this moment to present my research study entitled with determination of nitrite, nitrate, total fat and heme iron content in selected ready-to-eat processed meat products commonly available in Sri Lanka. This research study mainly to find out the relationship between the health hazard, particularly cancer incidences and consumption of processed meat products. The meat processing technologies is one of the remarkable terms nowadays. It utilizes all edible parts of the livestock for the adult food consumption. Europe and Asian technologies are well developed. The Europe technologies are disseminated to other extent of the world. Since the ancient period, the lean red meat are frequently consumed due to the energy reservoir, as considered as a nutritional bank. Then it converted into the several processing techniques, the basic techniques, including curing. Nowadays, the public lifestyles also changed because of the attraction of Western mania. The Western diet mainly composite with fast foods. One dish of fast foods have the major contribution of processed meat products. So, along with health hazards also increase, particularly non-communicable diseases due to the adverse and non-appropriate food consumption. In this regard, cancer is one of the prominent and aggressively steadily on rise. So they have a question. So there is a relationship between the processed meat products and cancer? Yeah, maybe, because this is maybe evidenced by several researchers. Because the processed meat products can be cooked at high cook temperatures, as well as there are several additives are added to obtain the delicious and absolute final products. So during the production or preparation, there are several harmful substances that arise that may lead to develop the cancer cells. Further, the processed meat products have the high salt and sugar content. The Sri Lanka is also, the cancer incidents are prevalent and also steadily on rise. The death rate also can be accounted for 100%. The cancer incidence also, it maybe look like the Western trend. There is a necessity for research on determination of nitrate, total fat, and heme iron content in selected ready-to-eat processed meat products commonly available in Sri Lankan food outlets. For this study, the samples, particularly ready-to-eat processed meat products, were prepared by using ready-to-cook meat products available in Sri Lankan food outlets as well as Sri Lankan markets. The Food and Agricultural Organization, they categorize the processed meat products into 6 main categories, including fresh processed meat products, cured meat pieces, raw cooked products, pre-cooked cooked products, fermented sausages, and dried meat products. So based on this classification, here we selected burger, bacon, hot dog, corned meat, salami, and jerky with red and white meat. Particularly, they were prepared by using beef and chicken. Altogether, 12 kinds of processed meat products were collected with several brands. The RTE processed meat products were developed to prepare as follows. The burger was prepared at 70 degrees Celsius for 8 minutes. Bacon was prepared at 205 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. The hot dog was prepared by the way of parboiling, plunged into ice water for 5 minutes, then they were boiled to reach 66 degrees Celsius. The corned meat products were removed from the brine, rinsed thoroughly, then they covered with enough water and cooked at 63 degrees Celsius for 3 hours. The salami was prepared at 180 degrees Celsius for 25 minutes as a baking. Finally, the jerky was prepared at 70 degrees Celsius for 3 hours as a drying techniques. The RTE processed meat products are ready for the determination. So in this study, nitrate, total fat, and heme are considered as harmful substances to may develop the cancer. So in these cases, nitrate and so total fat are determined by using AOAZ standard techniques, as well as the free heme iron content was determined by using the acidified acetone extraction method. The results were interpreted using ANOVA and 2T's HSD test at 95% significant level. The nitrite and nitrate are nitroso components. Mainly, they have incorporated into during the manufacturing of the processed meat products as a food additive to develop the food additive as a curing salt. So then only we can obtain a delicious flavor at the end of the production. So, in these cases, nitrate are added to develop particularly they are added for the cured meat products. So based on that, the cured meat products have high content of nitrite compared to fresh processed meat products. Anyhow, there is no any significant deviation between cured meat products as well as pre-cooked cooked meat products. This figure illustrates the nitrate content of the processed meat products, selected processed meat products commercially available in Sri Lankan food outlets. Nitrate are purposely also added, incorporated, as well as naturally also found in certain processed meat products. Nitrate and nitrate are develop into nitrosamines during the high cooking temperature. So in this regard, salami had a high content of nitrate, and also dried meat products have the low content of nitrate. This may be due to that the salami has one of the slow curing processed meat products. The nitrate also is mainly incorporated for the slow curing pure meat products. This figure illustrates the total fat content of the selected processed meat products. Total fat content is one of the important nutrient component of the diet, as well as if we consume the too much of total fat, particularly animal origin, because animal origin it's mainly comprised with saturated fatty acids, monosaturated, unsaturated fatty acids, as well as the trans fats. So these are the type of fatty acids are mainly considered as carcinogens, as well as the total fat content, the high fat content may interfere on the estrogen development. So further, we can explain how the total fat content can be taken as the carcinogens, because if we intake high amount of total fat, this may be reserved in our body and also lead to obesity. Obesity is one of the prominent risk factor to develop a cancer. So in these cases, salami and bacon have high content of total fat compared to jerky and hot dog. The further, this is one of the interesting thing we can observe here. So there is a significant deviation. The prominent deviation we can observe between the chicken and the beef products, red and white meat products, where the red meat products, particularly beef, have the enriches of fat compared to the chicken, as well as during the salami preparation. So there is meat cuts. Mainly the salami have the 50% of the total fat in their body. Finally, we can go with the heme iron content. Heme iron content is also one of the dietary source. But anyhow, when we intake the high amount of heme iron content, our body have no mechanism to remove the excess iron. So the excess heme iron may be caused in our body oxidative stress and inflammation. It's lead to develop a cancer. So in this case, the jerky product have the high content of heme iron compared to the hot dog. However, there is no deviation between the chicken and beef products. Finally, this is the essence of this study. We can obtain as a comprehensive view. So in these cases, bacon, salami have the high intake of harmful substances compared to jerky and burger. So these are the conclusions we can obtain from this study. The cured and fermented meat products have high intensity of harmful substances compared to fresh processed and dried meat products. These are some of the references I used for the study. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Jamsia, for your nice presentation. Now the presentation is open for question and answer. And I would like to welcome our panel of judges to raise question from Ms. Jamsia. First, I would like to ask Dr. Saranna to raise his question. Dr. Sarananda, please.
Yes. Yeah, I think most of the processed products based on your presentation contain high level of nitrates. So there are some regulations again, so that don't they follow these regulations to control the level of added nitrate level into this foods during processing?
Yeah, Yeah, during the manufacturing or preparation, there is a regulations of fellow
Yeah.
as a ready to cook products. But after the preparation, after the development of the ready to eat products, there is no any regulations, maybe checkup or inspections there, because the ready to cook product are cooked at the high temperature cooking process, mainly beyond the 130 degrees Celsius. It may have the chances to develop the harmful substances. The nitrate and nitrate, other components also converted into the harmful substance like nitrosoamides. Those are the considered as the maybe evidence as a carcinogens.
Okay, thank you, James. Here, I would like to ask Dr. S. Jayatilaka to raise a question from Ms. James here.
Yes, Ms. Jamsia, I was wondering, because you have tested for heme iron as well, can you explain a bit why is it, why have you considered, do you have any evidence that it is causing some effects on me, on consumers?
Yeah.
The heme iron?
Yeah, the several researchers also evidence the heme iron, because our body only require 3 to 4 grams per daily, according to the daily dietary intake. But anyhow, when we intake the high amount of heme iron may cause interfere in our oxidative stress and inflammation in our body, because our body have no mechanism to remove the excess iron in our body. Because there are several studies also reveal that the heme iron is one of the major risk factor to develop cancer cells. Heme iron, mainly the animal origin have the heme iron food. They ready to release the heme. There is yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Paranagama to raise a question from James here.
Jansia, so based on your results, what is your advice to the general public?
Yeah, thank you, madam. This is a nice question. So based on the several studies, we can arise to some of the limitations. They are revealed that 50 grams of processed meat products, that's a daily consumption of 50 grams. That's equivalent to 1 hot dog or 4 strips of bacon is the cause of the increase the causative, mainly the colorectal cancer increased by 18%. So anyhow, we have to minimize the consumption of processed meat products. As well as there's some of the limited level also indicated as a residual level as well as the permitted level for the nitrate. So according to that, we have to follow our diet plan, because due to the Western mania nowadays, we are celebrating feast as well as, so we are mainly focused on the processed meat products as a component of for the festives or something. So
okay, Ms. James here for your nice answering. Okay, now we are going to move on to the next paper. Manufacture of low-haze instant tea extracts using Sri Lankan broken mix phanex as raw material. Authors are KAP Dalpadadu, HUKDZ Rajapaksa, CVL Jayatilaka, and SP Nisanka. Now, the presenter is KAP Dalpadadu. Please welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, my research topic is manufacturing of low haze instant tea extract using Sri Lankan broken mix phanex as raw material. Tea is considered as one of the most popular non-alcoholic and aromatic beverages with specific organoleptic properties. Sri Lanka is the third largest exporter of tea, and we are producing annually 300 million kilograms and contributing 1.2 for the national GDP. Ceylon tea popular due to the superior flavor and the aroma. So approximately out of total production, 10% going as a refuse tea, which is commercially known as a BMF. Sweeping, big bulk, fluff, mature stock, and fiber. As in the pictures, photos you can see, considered as the broken mix phanex. BMF accumulated during the rolling, drying, sorting, and grading. So what is the instant tea? Instant tea is a dried water dispersible solid obtained from an aqueous tea extract. And there are two types of water soluble. One is for two types of instant tea. One is for water soluble, and another one is cool water soluble. These are popular because of the convenient usage and the wide range of application. Only there are two types, two large-scale production facilities in Sri Lanka. So receiving of raw material, extraction, decantering, concentration, drying and packaging is the basic step of instant tea manufacturing. At the time of manufacturing, in the concentration, if a final consumer need it in the juicy form, we can directly pack into the aseptic pack and sell at a concentrate, or either we can spray dry it and make it as a powder form. When we cool down the tea, you can see cloudiness in the tea infusion, and it is known as the haze or the cream. This occurred as a result of the complexation of phenolic acid, tea catechin, and flavonol glycoside are involved in the tea creaming, and this process is accelerated by the potassium and calcium ion. When you have a cloudiness or the turbidity with the high haze, the unpleasant appearance is coming, especially in the ready to drink beverages. So my research and two objectives. One is to investigate the chemical characteristics of the raw materials, which is collected from the different elevation of the Sri Lanka. And second is to produce the instant tea powder with low haze. And find out what is the most suitable processing temperature before the spray drying step. So this study can be briefed into 6 steps. One is collection of BMF, second making the composite sample, then extraction and concentration of tea liquor, then pre-process temperature treatment, then analysis for the haze, TPC and caffeine, then validation with the commercial production. So at the BMF collection, we collected BMF from 6 different states. From upcountry 2 states called Industry and Rockville, then mid-country Deniaya and Sorghum state, low country Halvoll and Carinian. So these states were selected based on the similar management practices and similar tea processing method, and the state which are having more extent of TRI 2025 calculus and sample collection during the April 2020. And this making of composite samples carried out, especially when we manufacture insert in large scale facilities, we are using more than 12,000 kilograms of BMF per day, and those large quantities cannot fulfill with a single step invoice. So to overcome this one, we are using the combination. So same scenario I have practicing this one also. Now in the, as example, in upcountry we have selected Industry and Rockville. So there are 3 combinations. One is 50 from Industry, 50 from Rockville, and 60 from Industry, 40 from Rockville, and 40 from Industry and 60 from Rockville. So 9 combinations were taken into consideration. So 500 grams of BMF put into 4.5 liters of distilled water and heat up to 95 Celsius and do for 45 minutes, and then it's filtered using the cloth filter and the nylon mesh. This filter solution centrifuged at 4,500 RPM for 3 minutes. Then the extract was concentration using the rotary operator, and at the time of regular interval we measured the Brix, and final Brix came to the 25. Then tea extract combinations are exported to pre-process temperature of 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90, and then analysis carried out for total phenol of the tea concentrate, use the ISO 14500, 502, then hazing tea concentrate, use the Hatch meter method of the turbidity measurement, and then caffeine by using the chloroform extraction method. So data were analyzed using the ANOVA, and which is followed by the mean separation and Pearson correlation to find out the association of the among the tea yield, total polyphenol, caffeine and haze value in the tea estate. So the results, you can see there's a significant difference between the between upcountry versus mid-country and low country while you considering the haze, and same thing you can replicate, you can see from the polyphenol also. Highest haze value and the highest polyphenol value given by the upcountry and lowest given by the low country. So in upcountry, high total polyphenol, this can be due to the low ambient temperature prevailing in the upcountry because optimum temperature for the tea growing considered at 22 Celsius. The low temperature as a upcountry, it's always less than 20, and misty condition create less sunshine hours and it retarded the shoot growth, which end up with the higher accumulation of total polyphenol. And also catechin is the main polyphenol of tea and thiaflavin is the main oxidation product of the catechin, which is responsible for the haze level of tea. Thiaflavin, thiarubicin ratio high in upcountry, and because of that high haze level can be expected from the BMF of upcountry rather than the two other mid and low countries. When the strength of the infusion exceeds certain threshold level, cream formation will occur. So the tea infusion that are higher with thiaflavin and thiarubicin and caffeine having the higher creaming power. Further, the processing temperature has influence on oxidation. As the uptake of oxygen will increase up to the 29, where you are getting the polyphenol oxidase activity in the maximum. And at this peak, development of haze will occur as a result of that. And then when considering the caffeine level, upcountry having the lowest caffeine level and low country having the highest. Normally caffeine level is high when you have the higher shade level. So you all know that low country having three types of shade, high, mid and low. So this can be the reason for the having the higher caffeine level in the low country, but lowest caffeine level given in the upcountry. To understand the cream formation of in instant tea, total polyphenol content versus haze level and the caffeine content versus haze level were checked. Shown positive correlation observed between the haze value and the TPC, whereas the negative correlation observed caffeine and the haze value. Then to find out the second objective of best processing temperature, it exposed to 6 different temperature, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90. And all the teas which we take from the tree elevation. And as in the graph show, you can see at 70, we are having the lowest haze level. Even in the 80 also, there is a significant difference from the 70 and 80. There is a significant difference from other temperatures. But while considering the energy saving, 70, I think it's an economically viable temperature to maintain before the spray drying. So at high temperature, what will happen? Strength of the hydrogen bond become weaker and less energy to formulate protein and oxidized lipid complexes. And this may be the reason to get the low haze value at 70. So when the tea extract exports to 70 or either 80, before spray drying, the bonds get weaker and more insoluble will come to the soluble phase. And then while you are looking at the 90, you can see slight increase. That may be the all tree elevation. This may be due to the denaturing of the protein of the tea cream, and those particles may be accumulated in an insoluble portion of the tea extract. And these results were validated using the commercial scale setup, and mean haze value at different temperature we found, and same results in the commercial scale also. At the 70, it gives the lowest haze value with the highest yield of 27. So while we are doing the commercial production, this is the best temperature before spray drying. You have to expose your tea extracts. So in the conclusion, there are significant differences in haze level among the tree elevation, up, mid and low country. The lowest haze value from the BMF extract of low country and highest in the up country. A significant difference were detected from the total polyphenol among the three elevation categories. Up country showing the highest, where the lowest in the low country. The caffeine content of tea extract significantly lower in the up country and highest in the low country. A strong positive correlation between haze value and TPC, while strong negative correlation was observed between the haze and the caffeine level. There were not any significant differences in total polyphenol, caffeine or a haze level among the extract from BMF combinations of states in the same elevation. If we take in the same elevation, there can't be any significant differences. The results showed that the processing temperature of 70 could be achieved the lowest haze while getting the highest yield. And I must acknowledge to the Hayley's Global Beverages for facilitating this commercial production of incentive, then Hayley's Plantation to supply raw material, Palmyra to providing incentive miniature plan, and Biochemistry Division of Tea Research Institute for analysis. And these are some of the references. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dalpadadu, for your nice presentation. Now the presentation is open for question and answer. I would like to welcome our judges to raise question. First, I welcome Dr. Saranand to raise his question to Mr. Dalpadadu.
Mr. Dalpadadu, and so it is very informative presentation. So now, where have you done this research?
This was actually led at the Hayley's Global Beverages, that is in Hatter, Liquor.
Do they
and samples were collected?
Okay. Do they continuously doing that one? So your technology is given to
yes,
them?
Yes. So, doctor, it's like this, sir. Now, there are some buyers who are asking the low haze product with high clarity, especially for the RTD industry. So this, then we are doing this. By doing this, we can get averagely a reduction of 10 NTU level of the haze. Now we are practicing for specific products.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dalpadadu. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Jayatilaka. Please raise your question with Mr. Dalpadadu.
Yes, Mr. Dalpadadu. It's a very informative presentation. I would like to ask, perhaps you explained it, a little bit clarification on now you have validated a method for commercial production now. Is it
yes,
is it being done or like?
Yeah, I have did it for the 27 days.
Okay.
And then obtain the results.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dalpadadu. And I would like to ask Dr. Paranagama to raise a question with Mr. Dalpadadu.
Dalpadadu, it was a very nice presentation. And I have heard that calcium level also can affect this haze formation.
Yeah, calcium oxalate also, yeah, doctor. Calcium oxalate also influence for the creaming or the haze level. But in the mostly it's the polyphenol complex and caffeine complex is more prominent in this scenario to get the cream rather than the calcium formation. And it
have you analyzed the calcium content in these tea varieties? Or the...
Not in this experiment. Not in this experiment.
Okay, Mr. Dalpadadu, thank you very much for answering the questions from our panel. Okay, so thank you. Then next, we are going to move on to the next paper. Next paper title is Total Phenolic Content, Antioxidant Activity, and In Vitro Bioaccessibility of Minerals in Gasnivithi and Keren Koku. Maybe these are single names. Available in Sri Lanka. Authors are P.S. Pedruheva, KGLR Jayatunga, and R. Lianagi. Ms. P.S. Pedruheva will make the presentation. Welcome.
I'm Amoda Pedruheva. My study is based on underutilized wild edible species. I have selected two different species called Gasnivithi and Keren Koku. And nutritional evaluation was done in those two species: total phenolic content, antioxidant activity, minerals, and their bioaccessibility. So moving to identify the two species, the first one is Atrosichum aurum or Keren Koku, which is belong to family Pigeaceae. This was used by Asian people or the traditional people for a number of dishes. And this is large terrestrial plant which can be seen in flooded areas or mangroves areas. And this is of course called as edible fern. And importantly, this species is widely used in pharmacological cases, and most of the research areas, research studies also based on pharmacological importance of this species, like anti-inflammatory activity, cytotoxicity activity, fertility activity, likewise. So my emphasis goes to evaluate their nutritional potential. And in the case of Gosniviti or Taninum triangularia, which is also called as Rotaniviti, this also considered as wild herb. Also, a number of studies are based on their pharmacological importance and medicinal importance. Since most of the traditional medicine system, whole plant used for treat diabetics, number of diseases in respiratory tracts, and to reduce body temperature, since it is very this plant has very coolant effect, and for strokes, cancers, number of medicinal uses are in this plant species. It is very easy to identify this species since this has very beautiful pink color flower. And also this is a plant, this plant having succulent stem along with fleshy green leaves. So my emphasis goes to evaluate these two species for their nutritional compounds. So why I selected these two species which are coming under biodiverse or underutilized plant species. These species are neglected species, of course, and the consumption level as well as awareness of these species at very low levels, especially in the modern society. I think in recently, worldwide people, scientists and researchers are talking about food insecurity and finding new food sources, finding new healthy food sources, and also talking about finding cheaper food sources for developing countries. Likewise, number of concepts are there. In that case, I think it is very important to evaluate underutilized plants and their nutritional profile. I think through that we can improve awareness as well as we can improve the consumption of these underutilized wild edible plants. Based on that, I have set my goals to evaluate ascorbic acid content, phenol content, antioxidant compounds and antioxidant activity, minerals as calcium, iron, zinc and copper. And also I evaluated in vitro bioaccessibility fraction of these selected minerals in 2 species. I have selected all the samples from Southern Province, Sri Lanka and authenticated at National Herbarium Peradeniya. I have selected tender leaves and tender stems for my whole study, and samples were freeze-dried and stored at refrigerated conditions in airtight bottles. In the case of ascorbic acid content, evaluation was done based on AOAC standard methods, which is CoLab 2,6-dichlorophenol in the phenol visual titration method. Samples were extracted using 3% metaphosphoric acid. The sample was filtered and it was titrated using standardized dye. And by identification, the titration endpoint, the light pink color, the calculation was done based on the equation. And moving to the total phenolic content was evaluated using Pauling-Seo region procedure. Samples were extracted using methanol, and extracted sample was mixed with 10% Pauling-Seo region, and based on the gallic acid standard curve, results were expressed for the total phenolic content. Moving to the antioxidant activity, 2 different assays were used, DPPH assay and ABTS assay. In the case of DPPH assay, 80% methanol was used to extract the samples, and DPPH was added to each sample in the concentration series, and readings were taken using UV visible spectrophotometer at 517 nanometer range, and radical scavenging activity was calculated using this equation, and results were expressed in IC50 value. Moving to the ABTS assay, samples were extracted using 80% ethanol and centrifuged sample, and after that sample was centrifuged and supernatant was collected and add 1.1 milliliter of ABTS solution, and after that, reaction mixture was taken, and after 1 minute, absorbance were taken at 737 nanometer range. Results were expressed based on Trollocs standard curve. Moving to the mineral analysis. In the case of mineral analysis, both digested and undigested samples were analyzed for their minerals. In here, undigested samples were analyzed, Using two acid-base extraction procedure, hydrogen peroxide and nitric acid was used, followed by microwave digestion. And after collecting the supernatant, it was filtered using filter membrane, and atomic absorption spectrophotometer was used to detect calcium, copper, iron, and zinc. Along with that, in vitro bioaccessibility of minerals were calculated. In this case, whole procedure was conducted in vitro gastrointestinal digestion model. This whole procedure was conducted in amber color glass tubes, since I need to prevent irradiation issues, and whole the process conducted by mimicking the pH conditions and their temperature conditions by adjusting pH and giving different required temperature conditions using incubators. So in the case of gastric digestion stimulation, stomach electrolyte and posing pepsin like synthetic gastrointestinal juices were used, and pH was adjusted and incubated for 30 minutes while shaking. I have used here shaking incubator since I need to mimic the bowel movement of the gastrointestinal tract in human body. So in the case of partial digestion sample, then again it was digested in small intestinal digestion stimulation procedure. Again, pH needed to be adjusted and add another sets of synthetic gastrointestinal juices like pancreatine, lipase, and bile extracts, biosols, and then it was incubated and while shaking. Then the mixture was centrifuged and then supernatant was taken. Then the final supernatant was tested for their minerals using atomic absorption spectrophotometric method, as I have previously explained. Then, based on those two undigested and digested concentrations of minerals, bioaccessibility fraction was calculated. Statistical analysis was done using SPSS statistical software package. Moving to the results, phenolic compounds and ascorbic acid compounds in two species, Gasnivithi and Karankoku, were detected in significant amounts, and these amounts are high in Gasnivithi than Karankoku. And when reading about the recommended dietary allowance for vitamin C or ascorbic acid, it was mentioned that 65 milligram per day for both male and female, those who have 60 kilogram body weight, can be enough. So based on my findings, in the case of Gasnivithi and Karankoku, it is enough to have 1 or 2 grams per day in their dry weight basis to fulfill the recommended dietary allowance of vitamin C. And moving to the antioxidant activity, both DPPH and ABTS assay were conducted. DPPH assay results were expressed in IC50 value, which is inversely proportional to the antioxidant activity. In both assays, highest antioxidant activity was detected in Gasnivithi than Karankoku. And these values are very important since in the case of IC50 value, is lower than 1 milligram per milliliter mean, those we can categorize these species as high antioxidant potent species. So these two species, Karankoku and Gasnivithi, we can categorize or we can list it in that category. And moving to the mineral analysis, both undigested and digested samples data can be seen in here. So according to the recommended dietary allowances, it can fulfill a little bit by using 100 or 200 grams of Karankoku and Gasnivithi for the calcium, copper, zinc, and iron. But the case of digesting procedure, most of the identified minerals were drastically reduced. Based on these data, I have calculated the bioaccessibility fractions of minerals. In the case of calcium in Karankoku and copper in Gasnivithi, they show moderate bioaccessibility fraction. But in the other minerals, they show very poor bioaccessibility fraction. So this needed to be improved since this is the fraction which is important for the physiological functions of human body. Therefore, bioaccessibility fraction needed to be improved in all the samples. So based on that, the conclusion can be made Karankapu and Gasniviti are very good potential for ascorbic acid, phenols, and antioxidants. Gasniviti shows the highest ascorbic acid, phenolic, and antioxidant compounds than Karankapu. And bioaccessibility fraction of these species needed to be improved to meet with the recommended daily allowances of a human. And these are the references I have gone through. Thank you very much for the Research Council of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura for funding my research. And thank you very much for listening me.
Thank you, Ms. Pedriheva, for your nice presentation. Now the presentation is now open for question and answer. So I would like to welcome our panel of judges to raise question from Ms. Pedriheva. First, I would like to ask Dr. Saranand to pose his question with Ms. Pedriheva.
Yes, Ms. Pedriheva, very excellent presentation. When thinking of this Karankapu, while this preparation, so people let's boil it and throw the water and strain it, and then rest of these things is used for the making malung or other things. Do you think this habit will lose certain amount of this antioxidants and other things?
Of course, sir. But the thing is, depending on the vegetable type or the fruit types, the antioxidant level, that means cooking temperature, sometimes in the case of cooking temperature, the antioxidants levels may be increased in some vegetable species. Therefore, without doing proper testing with cooking conditions, I can't exactly telling whether that antioxidant level may vary or not. But I think yes, because of that boiling, the temperature may decrease the antioxidant level.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pedriheva. Now I ask Dr. S. Jayatilaka to raise her question.
Yes, thank you for your nice presentation. In your conclusion, you have mentioned, you have suggested that the bioavailability or accessibility of the minerals should be improved. So any suggestions how we could do that?
Yes, of course. In the case of bioaccessibility fraction improvement, we need to change food metrics. That means that molecular bondings, these things we need to change. Therefore, I suggest for the further studies, it's better we can do some testings with changing food metrics and some by doing some cooking, different cooking conditions and vary some temperature conditions and and by doing different kind of variations in the cooking temperature and cooking time, we can check the what will happen to the bioaccessibility fraction of these foods.
Okay, next I would like to ask Dr. Paranagama to raise a question with Ms. Pedriheva.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. And did you compare the nutritive value of Karankapu and Gasniviti with more frequently used green leaf types in Sri Lanka?
Yes, of course. I have these two, both species have high amount of ascorbic acid, total phenols, as well as antioxidants than especially Mukunuwanna, what we call Kangkung, Gotukola. These three species contain lower level of antioxidants and phenols rather than these two species.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
So you would have incorporated that also into your discussion.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pedriheva, for your nice presentation. Okay, we are going to move to the last and the final presentation of this technical session 2. The paper title is Effect of Thermal Processing on the In Vitro Bioavailability of Minerals and Anti-Nutritional Factors from Indian Almond Nut. Authors are GM Saibu, OB Adu, OO Ogunrinola, SO Ogun, GA Adiemo, CM Naifi, RA Ali, OH Oloko Dana, ME Aruna, and OO Oguntibija. These are the authors. Ms. GM Saibu will make the presentation. As a note for the judges, so we only broadcast their presentation, but there will not be any question and answer from the presenter, as they are not in a position to coming online to answer your questions. Therefore, I kindly request the panel of judges to make their evaluation for the rest of the 5 presentation and send to the coordinator, Dr. Rasanjali, as soon as possible. Thank you. Now you are going to listen to the last presentation of this technical session.
Good day, everyone. I'm Sarita Nobu from Lagos State University, and it's a privilege to present my paper in this conference, and I'll be presenting on the effect of thermal processing on in vitro bioavailability of minerals and antinutritional factors in Indian almond, which is Camellia category. Indian almond, Camellia catapa, is a very popular crop. It is a fruit which is eaten by most people. And after eating this fruit, the ad kernel is crushed and the nut removed because the nut is actually very, very juicy. But there's a major challenge, and which is difficulty in extracting this nuts because of the hard-shelled kernel. So it is a really underutilized crop in this part of the world. And micronutrient deficiency is a major nutritional challenge in most developing countries. And minerals are actually very, very important biomolecules that are essential for the normal function of the body. Minerals are important in biochemical functions. For example, magnesium plays a very, very important role as a coenzyme in different biochemical reactions. Also, we have iron, which is also a major component of heme, which is important in respiration. Also, we have minerals like calcium, which is important in the formation of bones and teeth. So there are different uses of different minerals, and which are very, very important for the proper metabolism and function of the body. So it is very important for us to understand these nutrients and also their bioavailability in the body after consumption of food. It is very important for us to be able to understand the bioavailability of these nutrients. Also, we have what we call the antinutritional factors, which are naturally occurring constituents of food that limit absorption of nutrients in the body. So in this study, we're going to study the effects of thermal processing. Thermal processing, I mean different processing methods like boiling, drying, pressure cooking, roasting on the bioavailability of nutrients and also the antinutritional factors in Tikatapan nuts. So basically, the aim of this study was to determine the effect of thermal processing on the in vitro bioavailability of minerals and antinutritional factors of Tikatapan nuts, as I earlier mentioned. So this is the nuts, hard-shelled nuts, and this is the juicy part. I said we're going to, the white part shows the juicy part that is extracted and is eaten by people. The materials and method. First of all, we collected this fruit. After that, the hard-shelled kernel was, the outer flesh was scooped away, and this hard-shelled kernel was broken and the nut extracted. After that, processing of this nuts, we boiled some, pressure cooked some, we dried, and also we roasted. So after that, we did digestion of samples, peptic digestion of samples, quantitative mineral analysis. Also, we determined the phytic acid and the tannin concentration, both in the raw and the thermally processed samples, after which the results were subjected to statistical analysis. So I will go straight to the results. From the results, we can see that the raw samples had higher mineral concentration than the processed samples. This could be due to the various processing methods, and this could also be due to the leaching out of this minerals into water. We would see that for the pressure cooked samples, at the lowest mineral concentration as compared to the raw sample. This could be due to the leaching, as I said before, the leaching out of these minerals into water. But also roasted samples, dried samples were also the concentration of minerals across for sodium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, copper, iron, and zinc was actually lower than even the raw samples. This could also be due to, let's say, volatilization of some of these mineral components as exposed to heat. But all the same, the concentrations of these minerals were still high, in the thermally processed samples. So we also checked for the mineral concentration in the digested sample, peptide digested sample. We also see that it's also followed the same trend as the undigested sample, with pressure cooking having the lowest concentration of sample as compared to other samples and the raw sample. Also, we checked for the mineral digestibility and relative digestibility of Tikatapa nuts, and we found out that the relative digestibility of processed samples, which is the thermally processed samples, were actually higher than the raw samples, showing that after digestion, there's an increase in the bioavailability of these nuts, because the thermally processed samples showed higher relative digestibility as compared to the raw sample. Also, we looked at the effect of processing methods on the antinutrient composition, and we can see that the processed samples had lower tannin concentration and also lower phytic acid concentration as compared to the raw sample. So I will conclude by saying that the mineral concentration of Tikatapa nuts was significantly higher than raw Tikatapa nuts, was significantly higher than those of processed nuts, with the greatest loss observed in pressure cooked sample, followed by the boiled, roasted, and dried. And I said earlier that this loss could be due to leaching of materials of these minerals into water, and also volatilization of some minerals exposed to high temperature. Also, mineral digestibility was generally low in the raw Tikatapa nuts as compared to the processed samples, indicating that the bioavailability of minerals in foods increased after thermal processing. The thermal processing methods also enhanced the reduction of these antinutrients in the nuts of Tikatapa as compared to the raw sample. So it is evident that thermal processing of Tikatapa nuts increased the bioavailability of these minerals in the body. Would increase, I'm proposing that would increase, because in vitro, this increased the bioavailability of these minerals. And also, thermal processing also reduced the antinutrients in the nuts of Tikatapa as compared to the raw sample. These are some of the references used. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. G.M. Saibu. With this paper, we are coming to the conclusion of this technical session 2. And first of all, I would like to congratulate all speakers for their excellent presentation. And then I would like to thank our panel of judges for their valuable job and helping me to manage the time very well. Finally, I thank the coordinator, Ms. Dr. Rasanjali, for all the help she rendered to me to run the session effectively. And now I would like to hand over the podium to Dr. Rasanjali, and I complete my job. Thank you, all the participants, all the presenters, and all the panel of judges.
Thank you very much, Professor N. Marikkar, for chairing the session and conducting the discussion in the most fruitful way. Let me also thank the panel of judges, Dr. K.H. Sarananda, Dr. M.P. Paranagama, Dr. S. Chayatilaka, and also the presenters for their valuable contributions in making this session a great success. We shall start the invited presentation of Professor Diana Beckles from the University of California, Davis at 1:30 p.m. Please join through the Zoom link provided for the main event. Now we have another exciting presentation for you. PGIA, as the pioneer in postgraduate education in Sri Lanka, offers programs in 31 different disciplines. These programs are offered through different boards of study. Let us take a moment to view the posters prepared by boards of study introducing the degree programs. The videos of the technical session and the introduction of Board of Study will be available in the YouTube channel dedicated for this event. So I would like to thank you all for joining with us, and let's meet again at 1:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone. And I would like to request our 3 judges to wait with us few more minutes to finalize the evaluation. And the participants can leave the session. Thank you.